Okay, this is a demonstration of the Access tutorial, the very first assignment in learning about Access. The files that you will need are in this folder. So the first thing you need to do is download that folder. This is also where you find the instructions. Now I'm using Firefox, so mine may work a little differently than yours, but you should know how to download files. Okay, once you've done that, you also need to unzip those files or extract them. And those are the files that we'll be working with. I'm going to delete the zipped folder so I don't accidentally start working with it. In this folder, you'll find the data files that you'll need, and also all the lesson files or instruction sheets. We'll start with lesson 1. Okay, the first part of this lesson tells you about how to get ready with your files, which I have just shown you. So we're going to skip down a little bit. You don't need all of those instructions because yours are a little different since they're in our course room on Canvas. Start with the Access overview. Be sure that you know all 4 database objects that you'll find. Databases start with a table, which is where you store the data. So someone has to input that data into a table, or sometimes it may be imported or exported in other formats. Then once you have a table in there, you're going to ask it questions or queries to extract information out of there. It may be every one of the employees that were hired after 12/31/2000. It could be every one of the employees that are from Alabama, or it could be lots of different queries that you're pulling out information from the tables. Forms are just a different and more convenient way to input data. So it's similar to the table, except it's prettier. The table is very drab, and sometimes if you've got an employee that's all they do is input data all day long, then it may be better for them to input it into a form so it's a little bit easier to maneuver around and they won't make as many mistakes. And then reports, finally, are what we create when we've extracted data to turn into our employers. So it's in a little more friendly format that looks prettier, looks professional, and it's in a good format for us to be able to read it. To start Access, it depends on how it was installed on your computer, but you should see an icon on your computer desktop probably that has Access in it, or it could be that if you go to the Start button, that you'll see if you're using Windows 8 that you'll see Access. And if you don't see it, you can always just type in the search box Access. And mine's 2016, but that's okay. There aren't many differences, and open it up. And that's how you can get to your Access. You can also, if you want to, add that to your taskbar so that it's always down here. This is your ribbon on just like it is in Microsoft Office, your shutter bar, which shows all Access objects, or there may be big databases that you only want to show the tables or you only want to show the queries, and then your navigation pane. And we'll be working with that in just a minute. Okay, let's start with Drill 1, Database Objects. And this is on page of your handout. It's on page 8, so if you want to follow along with me, you can. And what it tells us to do is to open Access 1, Drill 1. So I'm going to open that data file. And again, I found it from that folder I downloaded. And all we're going to do in this one is kind of navigate around to become familiar with it. It shows all your access objects. Here's your employee table. Here's your team table. Here's a query of team 4. Here's your forms employee. And here's your report team 4. So I'm going to double click the employee table to open it. And you should be able to see all the information. And then they want us to close that. Double click team 4 under queries. And there's your query data sheet. And again, you can close it. Employee under forms, and there's what the form looks like. And a form can be very customized, so it can look a lot of different ways. And team 4 under reports. And with reports, you have several tool buttons down here. For instance, one of them is that you can do report view. You can also do print preview. If you click that, it looks like what it'll be when it prints. You can also zoom in to your report by using the zoom bar here, or zoom out, either one, so that you can see the report better. Okay, and you can close that, close the print preview. You can always go to File Close if you can't find the window, but it's usually the bottom button. The top button will close the actual database. Okay, on page 8 we'll go, page 8 will go to drill 2. So we're going to open, I'm going to close this because it tells us to, and then we're going to open it back up, Access 1, drill 1. Display all the objects. If they're not all displayed, which they are, click on All Access Objects. This one just has us maneuvering around on the screen, some of the quick ways to move around. Open the employee table. To get to the end of the first record, you can press End key, and notice it goes all the way over here to the click to add. You can press the Home key to go to the beginning of that same record. You can move the tab to go to the next field, and you can use the arrow down to go to the next record each time. Okay, in drill 3 on page 8 or 10, on page 10, drill 3, move the insertion point to the first field in record 11. That's 12. It's supposed to be 11. That's because this one has already been put in here. That was their mistake. So I'm going to delete that one. Okay, now we're good. So input the information that you see on page 10. Press the tab to keep moving across there to input the information. Okay, and you now have 11 records. Then they want us to put some data in here for 2 other records. So all we're doing here is learning how to input data into records. If you wanted to, you could input it in the form, and you'll learn how to do that later, and it's really the same thing. It all goes back into the table. And one more. Notice that the two-letter state abbreviations are always in caps. Okay, and that puts us down as they wanted us to with 13 records. Notice that when you move to the next line, it does save it, so you don't have to save the database unless you've made formatting changes to like a report or column widths or something like that. Okay, that takes us to drill 4, which is a different database, so I'm going to close this one. Didn't ask me to save it because it had already saved it. They want us on page 13 to open up ACC1 drill 4. Display all access objects, which it is. Open the customer contact data table. Practice selecting all the records, which is this cell that intersects both the columns and the rows, and that selects all the records. The first record by clicking on the row that record is on. The last record by clicking on that row. And the city field by clicking the column heading. Click in the name field and click Find on the Home tab and key Thatcher in there. And we want to look current field in the look-in box, select any part, which is the first choice, in the match box. Click Find Next, and there she is. We want the one that lives in Bangor, Maine. That's not her, so I'm going to Find Next. And that one is the one we're looking for. Select that record, close this box, the Find box, select the record, and delete by pressing delete on the keyboard, or you can right click and delete as well. And it'll ask you if you're sure. It always checks to make sure you're sure when you delete something. Okay, then close this table and open the customer form. Click in the name field. Click Find on the Home tab and find the record that has boutique as part of its name. Find Next. And we should have found it. And so we want to delete this record. So we select it by clicking the arrow on the side and press delete. And yes, we do want to delete it. And close your Find in Place dialog box. Okay, then we need to find the record for, in the name field, we want to find the record for Brenda Reston. And she is not the one in Uno. We want the one in Rhode Island. So click Find Next. And there she is, Providence, Rhode Island. And they want her last name to be changed to Perez. So change that name. And you don't need to save it because when you go off of it, it will save it automatically. Okay, then close this. Go to the customer contact table, and you should now see that you have 18 records. And then close. And that's the end of this lesson.